Recently I've had more and more energy coming through, which resulted in lots of pains and lots of changes and in the way my consciousness interacts with Andromedan, so that, as he said before, there's more of a seamlessness, to the point that it was talked about my transition date, when I would return, coming to terms with those. I think from that conversation with him and how I've explained it, Sandy's got a few questions.
Yeah, quite a few. And these are just some of them. I'm sure I could think of many more. The first thing came into my mind, and these are quite quick thoughts. I kind of realised that perhaps your past lives are Andromedas and not Robert's.
Correct.
So how does Robert connect to them? Through you?
Robert is me. He is an experience. He is an overcoat. He am I. I am Andromedan. And the overcoat, the consciousness, that separation program, I interface with it, and it is connected to those past life memories that I have had. So there's no reason why it should not be connected and experienced.
Thank you. One of the things that we've been talking about the last few days is that your and my Andromedan bodies are in stasis while you are having these experiences as us. Have you been in stasis throughout all of your earthly incarnations, or do you wake up in between in some way?
I've had one wake in between, but the time that you imagine a human life takes is different for the passing of time as it may pass for me. So to have several lives contiguously, because remember, you see these as one after another, one before another, and in the way that they are in your time frame of your world, they do exist like that. But for me, that's not how I experience them. So time is not quite so relevant. In fact, it isn't relevant at all. So whilst that part of my separation is having the experience, for me, a lifetime can be quite a fleeting moment. How much energy and consciousness does there have to be? I said before that the amount of consciousness that one has is enormous. So the amount of experience that can take place in a short period of time, if we're still using time as some kind of measurement or way of looking at it, then a lifetime can be momentary for me where I am.
So are you experiencing all of our lives at the same time? And if so, how do you process that and become aware of each one?
Consciousness in part processes those points of focus. They are programs. They are constantly changing programs. What we do now affects the program in the past. You see, you may have what you think is a memory of the past. That is entirely different to the past that exists now. The past that exists now is a reflection of the current moment of now, as would be the future. But neither the past nor the future exist in those ways. They are all at the same time, all constantly changing in the pulse, and it's about the point of focus that one has. You said, and you used the word, it's about processing. And yes, the I that processes them, it depends what one means by I, and it depends what one means by self and multidimensional self. So yes, they are processed, and as I said, the time for me being involved in a program, in a consciousness, in an interface with that experience is different to the experience that you have.
Would all of your Earth incarnations have been a progression to bring your consciousness or your earthly consciousness up to a point where you can realign and rejoin? Is that the intention? To bring yourself back to you?
I could always see where I exited and rejoined myself. It's only been a matter for you, as you may consider, a few months where I have lain, where I am. My consciousness is active. I'm not struggling to be where I am. I think I've lost the question on that one, Sandy.
I'm kind of, well, the next one's kind of ties in. So,
okay.
Has it been necessary to have multiple lives on Earth to help the transition of the world, the Earth, to 5D? To put that energy into all eras, as it were?
There is a natural flow, there is an appearance of a natural flow. That is what gives an understanding. If life were jumbled up and not in an unfolding, it would appear very, very confusing. So the way in which our focus moves is our focus moves through what seems to be a progression, and our focus has an experience of it in that way. There are Arcana programs that stitch together this information to create a flow of information that fits within itself. Even though that flow of information can change, as I'm saying. So it's down to your point of focus where you are. But yes, there is a progression. I said there was grow, there was experience, and the sum of experiences, and how the end, which is constantly changing, affects the other parts. As if we reinvent ourselves, we create ourselves in the beginning. So that is the strange paradox, that we create ourselves, and we create all that there is, and all that there is has been created and continues to be created. Those are strange concepts, but yes, there is a flow, and that flow fits together. An invention of one kind.
So you have effectively, I know there is no future, but from an earthly, from our perspective there is. So you have effectively come here from the future, inserted yourself into not just Robert, but all of your previous earthly lives. Have you done that just for the experience? Or is there a bigger purpose, perhaps, to save Earth from being taken over by artificial intelligence, or something other that may impact on the whole universe, if that were to happen?
I am having a retrograde experience, I have placed my consciousness into separation programs in order to have those experiences. Earth called out for help on many different levels. Some beings believe that there should be non-interference. Yet, of course, what happens or potentially happens on Earth has different timelines, and some of which are quite catastrophic for not only Earth but for other entities as well. So they are involved in those timelines. But at the same time, we gave our DNA, we gave our energy, and whilst we gave it with free will, it is nonetheless a part of us. So when we are having this experience, it is because Earth and its inhabitants were calling out on another vibrational level in need of help. So it wasn't so much selfish that we needed to change it for the influence that it would have on our timelines, but there was a call for help, and those that felt minded just took part out of love. It was not for any reason other than that. I think that's
Yes. Well, thank you. Thank you.
Well done.
Thank you on so many levels. So is Aqualia's Andromedan body also in stasis? Aqualia is my Andromedan self.
Yes, there are many at this time. There are other beings who are able to put their focus in slightly different ways, some of whom take a longer period of removal or separation, others who can place their focus more directly in for perhaps shorter periods without having to go into stasis. So it varies, but yes, that is so for you and for many others. This is why when the transition comes, when 3D Earth will in effect just not be able to sustain the light, and the inhabitants, the Terran parts, move to fifth dimensional reality of Earth, which already exists where they are already at that dimension, and why nothing is the same. What is here just does not exist. I've talked before about the intent to clear the planet, to make things right, and that these are forms of intent, but that when one joins the fifth dimension, it's not on the same timeline. So one doesn't have to leave it at a specific time, but providing the intent to heal the Earth has been put in place by all, and there are no negative entities in that way affecting it. So there are many factors that allow for the change to fifth density, but as I said, some will go to other third dimensional places, but quite a few will return to their other alien selves, and when they wake up, their Earth lives will be as a memory, as a past life, as oh I remember that. It will be as if their new body, their old body, the one that they then inhabit seamlessly, full awareness, there is no panic, nothing, just...
So Robert and Sandy are the last Terran 3D incarnations of Andromedan and Aqualia?
Yes. Yeah.
Will there be a possibility of reincarnation on the fifth density Earth?
the vibration that you are acting at with Aqualia is slightly above that. Why would you need to have a retrograde experience to save a planet, to save a world in 5D that does not need to be saved?
Well, wouldn't necessarily be an experience of saving the world, it would just be an experience.
If that's what you chose to experience, but you would probably consider why you needed to have that experience. What would it suit you? What would it serve you?
I had no idea. It was just a theoretical question, really.
In theory, you can, yes. But you would be able to interface more easily with that world. Not so much from a projection, but in your physical body, with the appropriate energetic reinforcements around you, you could visit in any event. So it depends whether you have a need to experience that density or to visit it.
I could dip in. So what density is Aqualia?
She is 6th density, but functioning on more than one. There are several planes that contain different densities. Our biospheres and ships contain several dimensions and function on several dimensions. That would take quite some explanation.
So I'm more than me. So my last question is, what does Aqualia mean in Andromedan speak?
Alia is all around.
Mm-hmm.
Aqua you would assume to associate with water, but it's not. Aqua. Let me look deeper. I am not connected to this at the moment. Standing tall, Aqua.
Oh.
Like a statue, like a sentinel with not so much a spear or a staff, but as I'm now showing Robert, or I'm showing myself, a standing tall being. And this is what is at odds with the rest of the name, so you might think standing tall as a sentinel, but at the same time all around. That is a bit of a dichotomy, a bit of a duality, but one can be both, one can be more than one thing. So you can be standing tall like a sentinel, to look toward or to guide or to be your own guide, and yet at the same time be all around and everywhere, because you are of course a part of everything.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
There was something else we were talking about, wasn't there, before, that's popped into my head to ask.
We were talking about grief just before we came back, weren't we?
Yes.
And
the attachments.
we said only by the human attachment can there be loss, and only through loss can there be grief. But in our dimensions, the attachments are not there. We love ourselves unconditionally. Our needs are not met by others. We have everything that we need inside every one of us. We need nothing from anybody else. But we don't live as if we need nothing from anyone else. We live loving them and giving them love, which they do to us unconditionally. But we do not have human attachments. Therefore we cannot have loss. We do not have grief. So our way of being to you is so hard to comprehend.
But what we were talking about was more earthbound, wasn't it? The mechanism of grief. So the mechanism of grief is, as I was saying, it's attachments. It's the attachments you make to somebody in life, and the grief, the process of grieving, is the act of unleashing those attachments.
I don't know whether it's unleashing those attachments
or coming to terms with them, perhaps.
Yes. Grief is the process itself, isn't it? Yeah.
That's interesting. Yes,
It's
it makes complete sense, isn't it? Because when you, and I have done this in some of my sessions before, when you really, well with you I think, when you really need to detach yourself from somebody, it is possible by cutting those attachments, those cords.
Yes. Yeah.
Even the ones that are really, really strong.
Yes, again, because they are the human needs and human desires to have oneself valued and loved and made to feel whole by someone else.
It's also growing up with somebody and making attachments from childhood, which is, is what was in my case, wasn't it? So it's all sorts of different things that make attachments.
Yeah.
Children, of course, are going to make attachments.
Parental attachments, yes. Yeah.
And sibling.
Yes. Yeah.
That's the mechanism.
But this is the point of transition. It is what you see as a death, but on the other side it's some other experience. It is not a death on the other side, which is what I've been saying.
Mm. Yes, well, it's a celebration on the other side, isn't it? Which actually brings me to another question, because I suppose, always assumed that when I pass, I will be with my mother and father again, and Linda.
Mm.
So that's not going to happen, is it?
There are all connections across the universe. We've talked about the multidimensional soul, whereby the soul has different experiences on different planets in different forms. You can contact and be in the presence of another soul, be they your parent or someone else, but how do you wish to see them? How do you wish to interface with them? As if they were your parent or your child? Or do you wish to interface with them as who they are now, or who they were before they were incarnated? So the relationships are different, and as you know, you've had many incarnations where a mother may have been a daughter and vice versa. So the perception then is about your relationship that you have at the moment. Of course, when you are no longer in this 3D program, your relationship with them will be different in any event, because it will be in a different program with a different perspective.
I suppose it's because it's the closest you're always going to, because that, I mean, my mother and father were my mother and father in this life, so they're the closest to me in this earthly life.
When you pass, the closest, the most fulfilling will be being yourself. You will be fulfilled. Your needs will be met. Not you will have needs as such. I was explaining this earlier about those sense of feelings. You will not need to contact them. It doesn't mean that you won't be in contact with them. But the way that you will be, who you are, will be so full that you do not have those needs.
It's not a need, it's love.
Indeed, then you will meet them with love, and interact with them in love and see them as they are in a multifaceted way, not just as your parents, but only through that vibration at that level can you see them in their fullness when you are looking through your fullness. I don't think anything is impossible.
No. So.
And why should it be? Because I think as creatures of creation, as entities of creation, or and experience, nothing is off limits.
No, nothing. But then, I mean, there's brings me to another great big question about twin flames, because we all have a twin flame, and I know that again is not need, it's love, but it's sort of meeting your other half. Is that still true as an Andromedan?
There are hermaphrodites as well as male and female attributes. The way in which I've talked about the way I feel and see things, it may appear that I have no need for relationships because I am so fulfilled, and whether I have a relationship or not is no more or no less to me. It is about an experience, or as you say, it is about love, not the human love. It is a word so filled with connotations and needs. Ours is a generosity without boundaries and without conditions.
I believe that some humans have that.
Yes, indeed. Yet they work within a program, and the program has certain limitations and dictations. But yes, they are functioning at some level, but the way in which they interact is still through that interface and that knowledge and those separation programs, still with desires, still with a subconscious program, still within the collective consciousness. And yet there are some beings that, as you say, see a softness and live within a softness. Perhaps that's a better description.
Perhaps.
We're probably outdone it for the afternoon now.
That's that was definitely.
Jolly
Thank
good.
you.
Okay, anyway.
Thank you, Aunt Emily.
Oh, thank you, Sandy. Yes. Anyway, cheerio everyone. Bye.